You know, I never told you this probably, but when I was married, we had a pre-Valentine's Day ritual. We would talk about tax law. That's why I was married. Well, it's one of the reasons. Anyway, we're all here. We're not married, like you and me. So let's talk about some tax law, tax policy, tax course, the new Desert Pencil tax course. And that is why I'm here today in my cyber self. And let me just say first, thanks to Mercedes for being the hostess today. I had to go do some Joe stuff that I can only do right now. I'm actually doing it right now as you watch this. And hopefully I'll be back next week, God willing. But thank you to Mercedes. Be nice to her. There's going to be a video of this, so Santa will know if you've been naughty or nice. Anyway, here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you the outlines for two new courses, two of them, okay? They're both tax courses. These are proposals. These are not the classes, okay? So if you have questions, sorry, not happening today. What I'm hoping will happen today is that you will grab the handout, okay, and follow through this with me, because I really would like your feedback on what I've got going here. I've been editing up the webinars last week or so. I'll post a bunch of them next week. And I just can't tell you guys enough how grateful I am for your feedback. It really helps me. What I'm trying to do with this thing in my sometimes clunky kind of way is to build that middle space out between what people don't know and what they should know. Okay. Actually, what they don't know and what they don't need to know is what I meant to say. And the middle space is what they should know. So it's kind of a Goldilocks thing. And your feedback is huge. So thank you very much. So my intention here is two new courses. And my hope after we get through this little session together is that you can send me an email to joe@joestill.io. It's on the last part of the handout. And let me know what you think, right? Am I missing something? Is there something you don't think we need? If you're going to watch this video and you have no idea what taxes are and you've never filed a tax return and you're from France, you probably don't want to be here today. But, just listen to what we got going. And if there's something that I didn't hit, let me know. Okay. And I'll adjust as needed. I will be the final trier of fact on that. But want your feedback. And I hope you guys like this because I've been teaching taxes for a long time. All right. And again, this is kind of the Goldilocks thing. Not too much, not too little, just right. Not here to do tax returns, not here to give legal advice, all that kind of stuff. The usual disclaimers. We'll talk about those here in a minute. But this is what I think people need to know. Okay. And if you don't know anything, at least now you know something to go to your tax advisor, your CPA, your software, whatever the thing is that you do to file your taxes, and you'll do more tax planning. See, this is the thing about taxes. There's a big difference between doing a tax return and planning your tax year. And so I'm erring on the side of planning for this so people know what the rules are so they can adjust their tax postures accordingly to be tax efficient. Okay. Now I've said before, and I'm going to say again, we live in a society that requires payment and people need to pay. And my thing is, and you saw this in the basic money course, you should pay exactly what you owe. Not more, not less. Okay. That's my thought. That's my counsel. And so let's get to it. All right. Next up, we'll talk about the new basic business course. Alrighty. I am now on handout page for the basic business tax course. And Mercedes, if you haven't, drop that PDF in the chat. I'm sure you have by now. And pen and paper, if you would please, make some notes as needed. Any questions, you're just going to have to send me an email again to joe@joestill.io. All right. So the first part of this course is going to have some redundancy with the first part of the next course that we're going to talk about, which is the real estate tax course. All right. So I'm not going to explain everything twice. That's not necessary. But since we're on the first one, the basic business tax course, I will explain. So I'm going to go through how this thing, these are summaries. This is not detail. Okay. So we're going to start out with just some basic disclaimers. Okay. The usual BS, not giving tax advice, seeker counsel, blah, blah, blah. You guys know what all that kind of stuff is. So the course will start with some of that. All right. And by the way, sorry I haven't said this yet. These are video-based courses. Okay. I don't know what the future is going to bring with teaching live. I'll do them on Zoom, if we get enough folks to show up. Don't know about live, but I'm kind of in the Beatles portion of my career. And what that means is, doesn't mean I'm as famous as them, but it means that the next round of what I'm going to do is going to be on video. And there's some reasons for that, which we might discuss later, and we might not, but kind of keep that in mind as we go through. Okay. Then what I want to do is to talk about the history of the federal income tax. This will not be a long lecture, but I think it's important. We should understand, hey, this thing that now sucks up up to half of our money, it came from somewhere. And it's actually a fairly recent phenomenon, believe it or not. It's not that old. So how did it start? Why is it here? What was its genesis? Just a little bit of a history lesson about the federal income tax. And then I'm going to talk about progressive and regressive tax systems. I think that in any kind of a course that talks about taxes at a business, kind of, and also a personal level, mostly at a business level, that this is just a definition that business people need to know about. And I covered in the basic money course. Okay. So I might just copy paste that into this new course. Don't have to, double my carbon footprint, as it were, but we're going to talk about that. We've already talked about that before. Then I'm going to talk about marginal tax rates, and marginal tax rates will be contrasted against effective tax rates. Again, I'm not doing the class right now, but this is a basic thing about taxes that people really need to and should understand. It doesn't take that long. It's not that complicated, but I've done the research. Not a lot of people know what this stuff is. Maybe you don't either. So good reason to take the class. Then I'm going to talk about how to calculate effective tax rates. So really items 3, 4, and 5, I just kind of broke these out so that my feeble brain could start organizing my thoughts. They'll probably all just be rolled into one section because they're not that long. Next up, we're going to talk about tax credit and tax deduction. Boy, is this like the most misunderstood part of the tax code for most folks I've ever met? Yes, it is. And it's really important. I've actually, weirdly, I don't know, the flame attracts the moth, I guess. I've already talked to 2 people about this week. Okay. So it's like, the universe keeps whispering to me, Joe, people need to learn how to do this. Okay. I'm listening. So we're going to talk about that. Basic bookkeeping. Covered that in the basic money course. Again, I might just copy paste that in, bring that video over. I think it was adequate and it served its purposes. Bookkeeping, super important. Adjusted basis. I've been teaching the Desert Pencil current version of the tax course for, the current one, like 5 years, but in general, over 20 years. Hardly anybody knows what adjusted basis is. And maybe you don't either. And man, do we need to know what this thing is. This is super important, especially on the real estate side. But we'll talk about it in the basic business course. Not complicated, but damn important. And then I'm going to introduce depreciation, which is, as I said in the basic money course, something that's really important for people to understand. Now, let me just pause there for a second. In the introduction, the first part of this video, the one where I told you guys you were so good looking, and by the way, you still are. At the end of that video, I said, this is more about tax planning than doing a tax return. And I was thinking in the intermission here, I used to do a class called Tax Planning Strategies. I think the last time I taught it was in Salt Lake. We had like 80 people show up. It was awesome. I guess people in Utah are worried about their taxes. Anyway, but in the title, it was planning strategies. And I've learned, as I've studied taxes, it's one of the things I've been a student of and a teacher of, and of course I'm a taxpayer. the posture of this course really is going to be, this is how it works. Set up your affairs accordingly to be tax efficient. Okay. Don't underpay, don't overpay, but be efficient. Understand the rules because they're there to benefit you too. You know, I get so pissed at politicians, as you guys know. Nothing worse is the guys that run the Fed, but especially politicians because, oh, you know, it's only rich people who can afford these accountants and CPAs. What bullshit. I mean, just what a con. All I have to do is talk to this thing and now talk to this thing with AI. We haven't done that lately. We'll talk about that in a webinar. Holy crow. It's just insane. So no more barriers to information. You got to have, you know, $10,000 to hire the big CPA lawyer guy. Sorry. Those days are past now. Sorry, politician people. Can't use that excuse. We all have free access to information. We should make decisions accordingly. So the posture of this course will be about planning and strategizing and not doing a tax return. There's going to be some stuff coming up about that, but that's not why we're here. Okay. Oh, a little too much Ritalin. Sorry. Your vehicle. That's a really important thing for taxes. It's reported to be the most highly audited item. And a lot of people don't really know how it works. And people I've talked to over the years are not taking advantage of the laws the way that they could be, especially people that drive expensive cars or used to, and you know who you are. This is a big deal. You need to know how this works, okay? I worked with several different tax preparers that say, oh, real estate people, they're just dum-dums. Just put them on the standard mileage plan. And here's a person driving like a $100,000 car that when I take 5 minutes to run numbers go, you know, you could be saving about 10 grand on your taxes. What? My CPA never told me that. Well, okay. Now you know. So we're going to cover the vehicle. All right. There's lots of stuff to know, but it'll be good. Sale of a business asset. Thank you, Christine, for bringing this up. You kind of rang my bell on that. When I was writing this outline, I thought about that. It was a couple weeks ago in the webinar. Form 4797 correlates with depreciation adjusted basis. Something we need to know. One of the worst things that can happen to a taxpayer, and I've seen this happen to people, is they get their tax bill and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. So I'm going to stop that from happening. So we're going to talk about that too. How about this one, boys and girls? Home office deduction. You know, many years ago, I was speaking at an NAR national convention, and I was in the green room with this guy named Joe, and he was the guy who was the head of this outfit called the IRS for this place called the state of California. It was crazy. He shook my hand and introduced himself. And he goes, hi, what's your name? I go, Fred Smith. No, I didn't. Anyway. But he had a great story about the home office deduction, which I'll get into. Anyway, lots of people met over the years, like, oh, home office deduction. Yeah, my CPA said, don't do that. That's going to flag for an audit. Not if you do it the right way. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. Entities. This is an important topic for business people. Should you be one? How do they work? What do they cost? How do you set them up? What do you got to do? Okay. I know this stuff. I'm going to tell you how it works. Okay. I've done all the research. I have it all laid out. It's not super complicated. I mean, it's not super simple, but these are important decisions. And I'm giving people access to this for a fraction of what someone would charge the other professional license to counsel them to do it. Okay. Now, again, I'm not giving tax or legal advice, but I'm arming people with enough information to walk into their licensed advisor and go, hey, you know, why are we not doing this? You know, I have personally had as a client experiences, which in fact, I had one today, ironically, which I'll maybe tell you about later, but where I have paid people to be my fiduciary. Yes, I am a client as well as whatever all other stuff I do. And I go, what are you doing for yourself? And they go, well, I'm doing doop-de-doop-de-doo. And I go, well, why don't you tell me about that? Oh, well, yeah. So I've had that experience too. And my first experience with that was when I was filing a Schedule C and paying just boatloads of FICA tax on my Schedule SE And my then CPA, because I went to a class and went, well, what about this corporation stuff? I mean, I've heard this is kind of a good deal and doop-de-doop-de-doo. And she says, oh, well, yeah, we never talked about that. Yeah, we didn't, did we? It's costing me another $15,000, $20,000 a year, lady. And then I said to her, I go, what do you do? And she goes, well, I do that for me, for my accounting firm. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. These things happen. Okay. I don't know how frequently, but they do happen. And I'm trying to help people not let those things happen. So I'm an instructor. This is a class. We should at least know what's going on so we can get our affairs set up accordingly. That's why I'm doing this. All right. Retirement accounts. That's been kind of a fun topic in the Does It Pencil webinar. And we haven't gone deep and wide, but it's important. And, you know, I think retirement planning is something that people are like, yeah, well, you know, my spouse will take care of that, or I'm young, or, you know, whatever. And then one day you're 25, next year you're 60, you go, oh, that kind of hurts. Ooh, that kind of hurts too. And you went, oh no, my IRA. Oh yeah, I was going to start one of those. Problem. All right. So I'm going to talk about that. Not deep and wide, but give people the basic talking points. Okay. And I've already gone through the sermon in the money course lecture about compounding. That's not going to be in here, but I will talk about pros and cons of different retirement planning, focusing on small businesses. All right. And if that wasn't enough fun, because it is pre-Valentine's Day today, we're going to talk about some tax forms in this class as well. Schedule C, 1120S, 940, 941, probably a few other ones for people's pleasure. And we'll just show you what they are, tell you that they exist, do some basic talking points, and that'll be the end of the class. Okay? Unless you think I should do something else at the end, or add or subtract or take away. That's the part of the feedback I'd like from you. Again, joe@joestill.io. Thanks for taking care of that. If you do it the next day, I'd super appreciate it. Doesn't have to be long, just a couple things. Thank you. I think that will take on video. I'm just guessing, and I suck at time, as you know. Probably about 4 hours, maybe a little less. 3-ish, something like that. Now, didn't say this yet. This class is going to be mostly lecture. We'll do some problems like on the depreciation stuff. The real estate class is different. It'll have more problem stuff, but this is more of a lecture class, so it's shorter. Okay. And we'll talk about price and our goodies when I see you again, but that's what it is. Okay. I won't summarize it. You got the handout. I'm going to take an intermission. You can have one too. I'll see you shortly, very shortly. Don't leave, please. You know, speaking of Valentine's, had this girlfriend after I got divorced. She was awesome. We live in Idaho, and she introduced me to the great Robert Earl Keen song, "The Road Goes On Forever and the Party Never Ends," which I think is a perfect segue into the Does It Pencil Real Estate Tax Course, which we're going to talk about next in your handout. Okay. Alrighty. Items 1 through 7. We've already talked about those. They're going to be in both courses, but I'm not going to talk about them here because I already talked about them. We don't need to do that. Okay. Let's move on to item number 8, depreciation. Now, in the basic business course, I think what I'm going to do is talk mostly about personal property. I'll do a little bit of real estate, but in the real estate course, we'll do more real estate. And this will include problems and a little bit, deeper discussion and things like that. This is a talk I've been doing forever, so I know how to do it. We'll have problems too. So again, this course will be a bit longer than the other one. Okay. It's because we're going to have problems to do. So that's that. And what we're going to do next. Next, we're going to talk about interest. There's going to be a couple different sections on interest. The first part will be lecture, and I will talk about the nature of amortizing loans. I will talk about the criminals at the Fed, my favorite people. And I'll talk about the correlation of COVID interest to the current real estate prices. And I'll give a little bit of forecast about the future if you guys are nice to me. But I think that general discussion, because it has such an impact on housing cost overall, it's so dramatic that people need to know what's going on so that you guys can, carry the word and talk to clients, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends. Do you guys remember the Breck Girl commercials? I used to live next door to a Breck Girl. I did. Don't remember her name, but she was a Breck Girl. Anyway, okay. And that will lead us to our old friend, the HP 10B2 financial calculator. Okay, so just quick sidebar here. The business tax course and the real estate tax course are both satellite courses that would attach to the Does It Pencil Foundation course, which I haven't talked to you about because I already know what that's going to be. And in those courses, the foundation ones, we're going to use 10B2. So by the time you get to this one, you'll know what it is. Now, am I going to make people take the foundation course for the tax course? No, but you should. So I'll give access with this real estate course to the warm-up HP 10B2 stuff. But in the course, we're going to use the calculator to do some interest calculations, okay? You need to know how to do that. It's an important skill set. Not difficult, but important. So we're going to do that in the course, okay? And then I'm going to talk about rental status provisions. And there's 3 parts to this. There's long-term, short-term rentals. There is the 14-day rule and or VRBOs. And there are the passive loss allowance rules and real estate professional provisions. And if that doesn't get you warmed up for Valentine's Day, then I probably can't help you. But that's what we're going to talk about in that section, okay? And then I'm going to introduce something called the cash flow worksheet. Now, in a couple minutes, I will talk about Excel, okay, because that's a part of the discussion. But for now, the cash flow worksheet gives you something called your after-tax cash flow. So this is a tax course. And what we're doing here is we're essentially scrubbing the income, levying the tax liabilities, adding back the tax benefits, and in a manner of speaking, telling ourselves and clients, this is what you're going to get on April 16th, if you get my drift, all right? That's what happens to the cash flow worksheet, okay? Then we're going to talk about capital gains, and there'll be 2 sections on capital gains. There will be a lecture, and then there will be another worksheet, okay? And again, I've been doing this since Jesus was a boy, so I know how to do it, okay? All right, let's stop there. There's probably some of you right now just going, Joe, stop. I've had enough. Turn off the fire hose. This is way too much. Okay, I get it. This part right here will probably take 4 hours, something like that. Maybe a little less. Okay, depends on how much I blabber. Because again, this will be a video-based course. And I'm doing the videos first because for compliance with department licensing regulations, I have to submit delineated timelines. And so that's why I'm kind of in reverse of how I used to do them. But if I said this before, I can't remember. Most of the stuff moving forward, not going to do a lot of live, some, but mostly Zoom. And we want to push this video-based stuff, and then we'll backfill it with the Zoom or the weekly webinar Zoom stuff. Okay. Anyway, on to the next page of the handout, last page. Okay. Let me stop here for a second. In the genesis of me teaching Does It Pencil, it's probably about like 25, 26 years ago. I wandered into a room in Boise, Idaho, and I was prepared, taught Does It Pencil. It was the first time I ever offered anything on Excel. Okay. And just to date myself, the delivery system for the Excel templates at the time was something called a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Remember those? Those are the post-cessors of the 5 1/4. These are the 3.5s. These are the high-tech ones. And I made the presentation with something called a transparency on something called an overhead projector, like the kind that would go like this, not mounted in the ceiling, and you had to write stuff on them. Remember that? Yeah, that's how old I am. And it's changed over the years. And I've done Excel templates in a variety of different ways, different offerings, different hookups, different goodies, different, la-di-la-di-la. In the current iteration of Does It Pencil, as some of you know or don't know, there's 4 courses. And course 4 in its current form was born from student feedback. And students who bought the Excel templates like, oh, they're great. You're kind of funny, but we need some application here. Okay, let's do it. So I rewrote all the templates and wrote an entire 7 clock hour course on video about how to do them. It's an awesome course. It really is. It's one of my better pieces of work product. But it's a separate course, and realtors can wrap a dime around in a building twice. And we know that. And, so it leads me to how I think I want to do this round, this version, which is probably the last Desert Pencil that I ever do. But I'm thinking about including the Excel templates with each course that one acquires, okay? Now, look, I'm not going to get into the mathematics of this. I'm doing this to make money and to save the world, but I want to, make a profit as well. And those kinds of things are profit-generating items. They just are. It's not hard to figure out. So the price will reflect that. But here's what I'm thinking is the more important part. Delivering to the customer a single press solution, okay? If you press the pay button and you buy this class, you get the class, you get some access to me every Friday, you get all the templates. It's all included. That's a pretty sexy offer. And, it's pre-Valentine's Day. Sexy matters. So I'm thinking that's the way I'm going to do it. And most of you are like, well, of course, dum-dum, and I understand that. But there is a method to my madness, okay, that brings me back to the handout. Now, let me talk about my intention of the application and the implementation of where we are now in the proposed Desert Pencil basic tax course, okay? Or not, the real estate tax course, sorry. So we've gone through all the lecture, we've gone through some key presses, we've done interest and depreciation and worksheet this and worksheet that and yada, 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 which is all the foundation stuff. It's super important. This is what you got to do, right? You want to talk about taxes and real estate, this is what you got to know, okay? And here's how I propose the presentation of the implementation. I'm thinking about taking what I call an average house, okay? An average house in average America. It's an average size, an average price, average lot size, average neighborhood. Everything about it is average. Why? Because I teach this all over the country. Okay. I mean, I've been to Nowhere, Texas. I've been to Manhattan and Miami and obviously Seattle and LA and Denver and, all the places all over the country. So, and it's all different, as we know. Okay. But the principles are the same. So by using average, I have a bigger net for everybody. That's what I'm thinking, okay? So going with that idea, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to present the average house to the audience, okay? This is what it is. This is where it is. I'll probably just draw a picture of a house on my tablet, dumb stuff. And then I'm going to talk about the after-tax cost ownership of this average house using average financing, average utility cost, average, okay? Here's the nut, right? And then we're going to look at it with the home office deduction, okay? See what it does. What does it mean? How does it, oh, here it comes, pencil, right? And then we'll do another application, because it'll probably be a split level just to keep it separate in people's mind's eye, of making it into a duplex or an ADU, okay? And how does that one work? And then, just to keep it super saucy, we'll sprinkle a little VRBO over the top, all right? So that hits all the basic residential use cases and overlays their tax treatments, okay? Now, I've been doing this long enough as a student and as an instructor that if I said, okay, boys and girls, get your pencils out. Now we're going to sit down and do all this shit with HB 10B2, it would take 2 days. It would. Because I've taken that class, I've written that class, and I've taught that class. And we just don't live in that world anymore. So I'm erring, E-R-R-I-N-G, erring towards Excel templates, mostly for that reason. Because when people sign up for this experience, I want them to go, press this button, press this button, press this button. Here's the answer. And in real time, it changes, okay? How awesome would that be to sit down with a client and go, oh, well, if you get this much rent, blah, 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 and if you do this, blah, blah, and there you go. Okay. Now, still going to have the HP 10B2. That's a very important tool. It's not going to go away. I'm going to keep it. I don't care what you say. It's going to stay. The Excel templates are just, a third course to dinner, if you will. Okay. They're not the dessert, but they're the protein. And those are really intended to sit down and do a more thoughtful analysis. Okay. Because now we're doing depreciation, we're doing interest, doing the loan, all the stuff, but it's all going to be built in such a way that it'll all be paint by numbers, just like all the rest of the templates. Okay. Stupid proof, kook proof, the whole deal. Can't mess them up because they're all locked, ready to be locked. You just fill in the stuff that's red. Everything is black, auto calculates, and bingo, there's your answer. Okay. I have never seen a better selling tool, and I invented it. Okay. Yes, that is a double word score for me, but it's a triple word score for you. So that's how I propose the implementation of this in the real estate tax course. Okay. Now finish up with this. On the handout, I have 3 sidebars. Sidebar 1, sidebar 2, sidebar 3. And that's where I talked about looking at appreciation again, looking at IRR, and we can do this in the after-tax posture. That's pretty easy to implement using Excel. Okay. It's not, I know how to do it by hand because I'm the desert pencil guy, but it would just take too long. Okay. Now I got to kind of think about the package here and, what are people going to buy and what are they not going to buy? We're not signing up for a semester of tax law here, and people are saying, praise God for that, right? But that'll be part of it. Okay. And I can squeeze that in and that'll be good. Okay. Now, how long is all this going to take? Well, I said the first part, 3 or 4 hours, probably a good hour for these applications to get through all of it and the explanations. I mean, teaching stuff takes longer than just doing it. It just does. And as I said before, being a course developer, being an instructor, I have to kind of look at both ends of the stick. Okay. The people who know more than me and have already finished the class before they walked in, I do get those people. And the people that are like, oh, I have this phone and I can do texting. Can you show me how to make a feature motion picture with it? Okay. I get both ends. So I have to kind of get everybody in the boat, get us all across the finish line. And I can't do that in 5 minutes. If I could, I would, but I can't, so I shan't. That's where we're at. Okay. It's a lot, but it's doable. And I appreciate your feedback. Okay. So don't tell me it's too much. I already get that that's probably what people want to say. You don't need to tell me that because I've actually sat through this class 1,000,000 times and taught it 1,000,001 times. I know how long it takes. I know what the experience is, and it is kind of long. But here's my thought on that. Okay, and tell me if I'm wrong about this. Okay, in the 35, coming on 36, it seems like 136 years that I've been an educator. Things have changed as things do. Okay, and when I started, we would sell out 2-day classes because that was the culture. And as the cliche goes, COVID changed everything. And the unfortunate part about COVID changed for a lot of people was expectations. Okay. And so now, and it's really been the doing of associations more than anything else in the real estate sector. People just think, oh yeah, I'm going to walk in and 3 hours and it's $50 and you're going to buy me lunch and give me an iPad and walk my dog and put my kids through college and give me clock hours and I'll learn everything you need to know. Nope. No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry. And AI is not going to save you from yourself on this one. You got to do the work. You do. Okay. Now it's not arduous. It's not a slog. It doesn't take forever, but think about this. Okay. What I'm handing you are the keys to do multi-million-dollar transactions. Okay. To sit in the circle with the trusted advisors, the people who clients trust with their tax returns, with their last wills and testaments. I'm talking about sitting at the table with those folks to be a trusted advisor. to get in on the important transactions in people's lives. And yeah, some of them have a lot of money and some of them don't. Okay. That's just the way the menu works. You're not going to do all your deals are going to be 10 million. That would be stupid of me to say that. That would be a lie. And I don't lie. But this will step you up. We talk about value add. I want to add value. Well, then do this. It'll add more value than you probably ever added in your life on any kind of this type of transaction or advice or counsel, or better yet, your own portfolio. Okay. It'll make you a smarter person, and you have to make the investment to do that. That's my philosophy on this. Okay. If people just want cheap and free clock hours, go get them. That's not my jam. Okay. Does it mean I have a smaller audience? Yes. It's what it does mean. But I have a better audience, a more engaged audience. And I'd rather work with a few people that are doing a lot than a lot of people that aren't doing shit. Okay. And that's just a strategic decision I made a long time ago. There's a lot of my competitors that do that other thing. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just different than what I do. And I think you guys know that. So suck it up, hit the button, have some fun. And I'll leave you with this. Next Friday, let's watch Valentine's Day movies. Just kidding. Maybe.